Powered by Riverside FM.
Powered by Riverside.
Good morning, UP Nation. Happy Thursday. Please hit that like and subscribe button. As always, help our program continue to do great things and grow. Happy Thursday. I don't know if it's if you're a Timberwolves fan, I don't know how happy you are. I want to start off the show. I woke up this morning and I got a email from my guy Reggie, who watches the podcast every now and then. And Reggie reached out, said he loved the podcast. Thanks, Reg. But he also said that, Lionel, how can you flip-flop or be frustrated with the Minnesota Timberwolves? I mean, we're in the Western Conference Finals, and I'm paraphrasing his comments in the email. And I thought it was a great question to ask. I don't run from the tough questions. I don't run. And I think for all intents and purposes, I think the Minnesota Timberwolves have had a fantastic year. I think if you would have told me at the beginning of the year that they were going to be doing this, I don't think anybody would have believed you. I didn't think that they had it in them. I thought that they would be pretty good, but I never expected that they would have put out the Denver Nuggets and they would be in the Western Conference Finals. Never thought that in a million years. But here we are. And so last night, I had a post-game recap. Pretty hard on the Wolves. Pretty frustrated. You know, if you watch the pod, you probably saw that from me. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not ashamed. Today, I'm just going to try to explain my sense of frustration, and probably with a whole lot of Timberwolves fans. You know, this doesn't just apply for Minnesota fans. It applies for really any fan base in terms of why they may get frustrated at their teams. So I'm going to try to find the words and articulate why I get frustrated with the Minnesota Timberwolves, even though they're having a great year. And so my question becomes, is it fair to get frustrated at the Wolves? Like, have you ever had a friend, girlfriend, spouse, someone that you have a relationship with that always does a lot of nice things for you? Always does a lot of nice things for you. Always there. And then that friend feels like after the fact of doing a whole bunch of nice things to you or for you, they can just treat you any kind of way. And then you have to accept it because they hang over your head that they've done all these nice things for you. There's a lot of friendships out there like that. There's a lot of people out there like that. They invest in your emotions. And so on the back end of it, they feel like I can treat them any kind of way because I've done A, B, and C. You guys understand what I'm saying? You're not allowed to get frustrated. or mad with those people. I look at the Minnesota Timberwolves as the same way. Like, they've gotten us to the Western Conference Finals. They're arguably having one of the best years in franchise history. So are you allowed to get frustrated at them? Are you allowed to be upset? Anthony Edwards, you can argue, is one of the best players to ever put on a Minnesota Timberwolves uniform. He's gonna end up breaking tons of records and being one of the greats. And because he's had such a great season, 7th in the MVP voting, are you allowed to criticize him? Because on any given night, he drops 40. He's a big reason why we're in the Western Conference Finals. So when he plays bad and he puts bad film out there, are we allowed to criticize? Does that make us a bad fan? That's kind of where I am with the Minnesota Timberwolves. That's the level of my frustration. As a fan, I honestly don't mind the wins and losses. I think any person with common sense has to understand that no matter what team you root for, whether it's hockey, whether it's baseball, whether it's football, whether it's basketball, whether it's tiddlywinks, there's going to be wins and then there's going to be losses. And as a fan, if you feel like your team has to win every game, then you're just delusional and you probably shouldn't be watching sports. There's going to be wins and losses. I don't mind that. Where I get frustrated as a fan is, I guess what I want from my teams, especially with the Minnesota Timberwolves in this sense, is I just want to be able to count on something. You know, we're human beings. We get used to routine. We count on things. You wake up in the morning, you count on the sun coming up. How frustrated or how upset would it be if the sun didn't come up? You woke up at 9 a.m. and it's pitch black outside. That would be strange. People rely on their first cup of coffee. And if they don't get that first cup of coffee, it ruins their whole day. Their day starts off not in the right way. At least twice a month, in most jobs, you get into this routine. You rely on your paycheck. How upsetting would it be if you didn't get your paycheck? So this applies to sports as well. When you get into a routine, there's just a certain expectation, or you expect something. And when you don't get it, it can just be upsetting. The expectation is not wins or losses. The expectation is this. Anthony Edwards has put himself out there as a great basketball player. You could argue he came in 7th in the MVP voting, that he's top 7 in the NBA. He's put a body of work out there, a body of work, all 82 games. He's not a load management guy. If he's healthy, he's going to play. He's put a body of work. His resume says this is what I do. My frustration with Ant, he's a fantastic player, is when he deviates from being top 7. And there's no sign of him being top 7. And then when the narrative comes out about the Timberwolves, it's always Ant. He's great. He's this, he's that. Baby Jordan, Kobe Bryant. So my frustration becomes, I need that. That's my expectation for these playoffs. If you're that, be that. Don't pretend if you're 7th in the MVP voting, be that. Give you another example. Who do you think the Denver Nuggets? Sorry, not the Denver Nuggets, but the Dallas Mavericks. Who do you think the Dallas Mavericks were relying on last night in game 1? Luka, Kyrie. The Dallas Mavericks fans have become reliant on them doing their thing. Boy, they've done their thing in the playoffs. And they opened up game 1 and they did their thing last night. You can rely on that. You can rely on that. On our end, we didn't get that from Anthony Edwards. But that is my expectation. That if you're going to be that guy, if you're going to be in the circles, in the conversation with some of the greats and be in that circle, Jordan, Kobe, like that's my expectation for you to be that. That's Minnesota Timberwolves fans' expectation for you to be that. That's where the frustration lies. Rudy Gobert. Oh my. Defensive player of the year. Stout defender in the middle, rim protector. 4-time defensive player of the year. We traded so many assets for him. For all intents and purposes, had a fantastic regular season. They just don't hand out defensive players of the year in Cracker Jack boxes. Like, you have to earn that. We've become reliant on that. I've become reliant on that. I expect the 4-time defensive player of the year to be impactful on defense in the playoffs every game. I'm not saying he has to play a perfect game. I'm just saying you can't be a sieve. You're a 4-time defensive player of the year. Like, you got to be resistant. You got to show up. That is an expectation. And when that expectation is not met, therein lies the frustration. If you're on Rudy Gobert's side, he can say, well, I've given nothing but my blood, sweat, and tears to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and now because I've had a few tough games. See, this goes back to what I said before. They can give you all these things during the regular season and then not show up or treat you any kind of way in terms of a fan, just give you anything as a product, and you're expected not to talk about it or to be upset. 4-time defensive player of the year. And I haven't seen, since the start of the Denver Nuggets series into the first game of the Dallas Mavericks series, I haven't seen any sign of that player. If you're true to yourself and you take the blinders off and you just watch Rudy Gobert. See, I watch tape. I watch the film. I'm a coach. And that player, the defense, if you just stepped into the NBA scene just in the playoffs and someone told you that Rudy Gobert was defensive player of the year, let alone the 4-time defensive player of the year in the NBA, they wouldn't believe you because there's no sign of that player at all. There's no resistance. I mean, I don't know how many balls hit his hands last night and just deflected off his hands in terms of rebounding. He had 7 rebounds last night. Biggest guy, longest guy on the floor, super athletic, rebounding. That's what he does. Didn't do it well last night. There's really no resistance at the basket. I mean, Luka is snaking in there. Those those screening roles that Dallas are running and the Minnesota Timberwolves are in drop coverage, for those of you that don't understand basketball lingo, drop coverage is this. Whoever is guarding the screener, they either can step up and meet the player coming off the ball screen or lay back and protect the lane. Drop coverage is when the defender decides to lay back and protect the lane. So Rudy Gobert's man who is screening, Rudy Gobert is just taking a couple steps back in the lane to stop penetration all the way to the basket. But what happens is there's a little pocket in there that you're giving up. And Luka Doncic is killing them in there. So the Minnesota Timberwolves coaches, they're going to have to make some sort of adjustment because you just can't play like that. And Rudy's not blocking any shots. And Luka doesn't need to get to the basket. He proved that last night because he dropped 33. So to keep doing that is asinine. Like, you got to make an adjustment. But Rudy Gobert has not been that player. I don't know where he's gone. I don't know if there's a direct correlation with him being a new dad or whatever. And again, that's a lot. Family's important. You know, when you have a new baby, it can be distracting. So maybe that's it. But he has not been the player that we have relied on him being the majority of the year. To, you know, for the most part, you got people questioning, should it be Rudy getting the minutes or should it be Naz Reid? Like, you can argue that Naz Reid should be getting the minutes. And what's funny about it is the stats don't really show it. The stats don't really show it. It's not like Naz Reid is coming out there and his stats are just overwhelmingly better than Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert played 38 minutes last night, had 12 points, 1 assist, 7 rebounds. Naz Reid had 15 points, 2 assists, 5 rebounds. But I could argue that Naz Reid is playing almost half the minutes with those numbers. What if Naz Reid got Rudy Gobert's minutes? 38 to 40 minutes a game. What would that look like? Just trying to explain my frustration. You become reliant on stuff all year long, especially down the stretch of a basketball season. People start paying attention to where you are in the standings and whether or not you're going to be the number 1 seed or number 2 seed, number 8 seed. We talk about that stuff all the time in any sport. How important is seeding? Because you fight and you earn to win all of these games to get home court advantage. Like, that's the word that's always thrown out there, home court advantage. So you become reliant on, hey, we have one of the best records at home out of any NBA team this season. That's the Minnesota Timberwolves. One of the best home records in the league. And you're fighting because you know you play better at home to get a top seed, to try to get that number 1 overall seed. Because if you get the number 1 overall seed, doesn't matter who you play, you're always going to have the home court advantage. Well, the Timberwolves didn't have that luxury. They were the 3rd seed, but that means at least in the first round, they get home court advantage. They were lucky enough now to face Dallas, who was a lower seed, so they get a home court advantage. This is what the players and the organization and the national media, they keep throwing out there, the word home court advantage. You got to work for it all season long. What does it mean? What does it mean? You could argue the Minnesota Timberwolves had a home court advantage against the Phoenix Suns. Then they earned home court advantage against the Denver Nuggets because they went up to Denver, won 2 games. That instantly, the instant they won that first game in Denver, they earned home court advantage. And they came home and gave that back right away. Luckily, they end up winning the series. Now they come back. They have, from the jump, home court advantage against the Dallas Mavericks. Dallas won last night. Instantly flips that. So what are we fighting for? Like, is home court advantage really an advantage? We have one of the best records in the NBA all season long at home. And then now, for some reason, we can't win at home in the playoffs? Like, what does it all mean? What can you rely on? I've become reliant on the Minnesota Timberwolves because of what they've shown me all year long, that they can win games at home. And now all of a sudden, because the lights are bright, there's a little bit more pressure. They're struggling to win at home in front of great fans. Am I not allowed to be frustrated with that? You expect certain things, you rely on certain things, and now once you get there and you settle back in your recliner, because there are certain things that you can rely on with the Minnesota Timberwolves that are at least going to be there, win, lose, or draw. These things are going to be there, and the Timberwolves pull the rug out from under you. That's my frustration. It's not about wins and losses. They've done some great things, but what can you hang your hat on with the Minnesota Timberwolves that you can say for sure this is going to happen from game to game, from series to series? You know, I'm tired of hearing about them being the number one defensive team in the league when it doesn't show up all the time. Like, what does that mean? What does that rating mean if you can't do it when you need to do it? If you can't bring that into the playoffs every single game, like, what does that mean? What does that mean? I don't get it. Guys, this is my frustration. So, Reg, the question is great. I'm just trying to paint a picture of my frustration and other fans' frustration. Like, I hope I articulated it well to you. It's just frustrating, man. Frustrating. Minnesota Timberwolves have a problem, and his name is Kyrie Irving. Like, I'm telling you right now, what I would do is I would start Jaden McDaniels on Kyrie Irving. Like, I would switch that right away. Ant can't do that. You know, Luka's a dog, but he's a little bit slower. He's a little bit more in Ant's wheelhouse in terms of possibly being able to guard him. I would switch that. If I'm Finchy, I would switch that right away because it wasn't necessarily the points that Kyrie scored because he had 29. Man, it was just the speed and the agility and the ball handling of Kyrie Irving against Anthony Edwards. It jumped off the film. It was almost the same, not quite. It was almost the same as Jokic versus Rudy Gobert. Like, it was evident. It jumped off the film that Rudy just couldn't guard him. So they had to switch to Big Cat and let Rudy roam. And it jumped off the film at me last night. Anthony Edwards don't want that smoke of Kyrie because you done rattled the cage. You done said you wanted to guard him. You done rattled the cage of a vet that has a ring and he knows how to win in big moments. So I would switch that right away. Just wanted to make an episode. Got the email from a guy, Reg. Thanks for the compliments, Reg. You know, I'm glad that you're listening to the podcast. You're part of UP Nation, but I just wanted to address that because I think it's important. I'm not jumping off the bandwagon. I love the Timberwolves. And even though they've given us a great season, like I'm allowed to be frustrated at them, aren't I? When they don't live up to expectations, when they don't do what they have shown us that they can do all year long, when they fight all year long to get home court advantage and they are losing playoff games at home, when you're named the defensive player of the year and you're a sieve on defense, I have to get upset with you. When you are mentioned with some of the greats, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, and you don't show up and you score 17 points in a game, non-aggressive, I'm not allowed to be upset at you. Man, like you can't give them a pass. You can appreciate them, but you don't have to be happy with their body of work if their body of work is not up to their capabilities. Thank you guys for continuing to listen to the UP. This has been Unconventional Playbook. Go Timberwolves tomorrow night. Hopefully we can tie this series up at 1 and be in a little bit of a happier space. This has been Unconventional Playbook. See you when I see ya.
Powered by Riverside.